A hush settles within the High Council chamber as twin rays of morning sunlight pierce tall windows, painting the marble floor with stripes of burnished gold. At the center of this serene sanctum stands a lone figure in flowing violet robes. Mace Windu, the warrior philosopher whose name has become synonymous with strength, conviction, and unwavering resolve. His grip tightens around the hilt of his unique blade, the pommel cool against his palm, as he steps forward to face the assembled masters. Here, the heart of the Republic beats steady, a sanctuary of deliberation and equilibrium. Yet beneath the polished surface lurks an undercurrent of tension, an awareness that the galaxy itself is beginning to unravel. Windu's journey began as a promising young Padawan, his potential unmistakable from the moment he first ignited his lightsaber. But it was his embrace of the seventh form, Juyo, refined into Varpad, that transformed him into a living conduit of controlled fury. A dangerous dance, Varpad stands at the precipice of darkness, where the boundary between light and shadow thins to a whisper. He ignites his saber, and in that instant, violet radiance cleaves through the chamber's golden glow. The humming blade sings of power, a resonance not of rage, but of focus, born from mastery of emotion, not surrender to it. Each pulse of light, each motion of his stance, is a testament to rigorous discipline. Varpad is not a form for the reckless. It is a mirror, polished with effort and self-awareness, reflecting the wielder's innermost truth. Most see only the beauty of the blade. Windu alone carries the weight of what it demands. As he moves through a series of flowing stances, each arc of the saber catches drifting motes of dust, turning them into ephemeral embers suspended in air. The motion is deliberate, reverent, an offering rather than a performance. Around him, the council's august figures exchange furtive glances, some captivated by the elegance, others quietly unnerved. For to watch Windu wield his blade is to witness a man wrestling with the storm and emerging each time unbroken. Born on Haruun Kal, a world of storms and survival, Windu learned early that power without control is destruction. Beneath dripping jungle vines, amid the hum of insects and the weight of night, he meditated. He trained not only to strike, but to still his breath, to listen. In the academies, he studied saber tones, the harmonics of conflict, the breath rhythms between thought and instinct. These trials shaped his unshakable resolve, his belief that one must confront the darkness within to resist it without. He carries these memories into every council debate, his judgment tempered by experience, his logic sharpened by empathy. Each strike of purple light echoes his past, a lifetime spent forging his identity not from accolades, but from introspection. Varpad became the language of that identity, his discipline made physical, his conscience made luminous. Master Windu's conviction is forged in the crucible of constant self-challenge. By embracing Varpad, he harnesses his inner tempest, yet he must remain vigilant, or the storm might one day slip its leash. A distant murmur echoes as concern and awe mingle within the chamber. Yoda watches from his elevated dais, his ancient gaze narrowed, not in judgment, but in deep, measured consideration. He senses both the promise and the peril in Windu's path. Tension ripples through the gathering. Can one who draws so deeply from the Force's more volatile currents remain uncorrupted? Can a man who walks the edge forever keep from falling? In a final flourish, Windu lowers his blade. The violet hum fades into silence, leaving only the echo of resonant energy dispersing into the air like smoke from a ceremonial flame. He exhales slowly, a silent prayer to the Force, both a benediction and a warning. There is peace in discipline, but that peace must be chosen again and again, moment to moment, without faltering. In the waning days of the Republic, Mace Windu's ascent to the council bench was not only a reward for his victories in battle, but a recognition of his internal mastery. His command of Varpad set him apart, not as a threat, but as a sentinel forged in contradiction. He did not deny emotion, nor surrender to it. He shaped it, wielded it with intent, and never ceased questioning its weight. To some within the Order, he was a beacon of how far discipline could take one. To others, he was a risk, a man whose strength skirted too close to the shadow. But to all, he was necessary. When diplomacy failed, Windu stood where no one else could. His blade held not for vengeance, but for clarity. As the Council convenes to weigh the growing tremors beyond Coruscant's gleaming spires, Windu's presence serves as both sword and shield. He is not just a warrior, he is a fulcrum, a balance point in a galaxy tilting toward chaos. Yet, how long can one stand at the edge of a knife before even the most vigilant footing falters? In the silence that follows his demonstration, whispers begin to stir. Whispers of prophecy, of Sith machinations, of wars that words may no longer halt. Soon, Master Windu's measured philosophy will clash with alliances built on expedience and secrecy, and the true measure of his discipline will be tested, not in battle, but in choice. Turn your senses toward the gathering storm, for in the next chapter, we journey into his philosophical crucible, the razor's edge between order and oblivion. In the aftermath of the council chamber's hush, the echo of violet energy lingers in the marble corridors, like the trailing notes of a somber hymn. Master Windu moves silently, his footsteps measured as he steps through an archway and enters a secluded dojo awash in the hush of night. Moonlight spills through a latticed ceiling, casting soft lattices of silver across the polished wooden floor. Lanterns glow gently above, their amber light mingling with drifting red and blue motes that hover in the air like suspended memories, fireflies caught in eternal motion. Here, removed from politics and the noise of galactic unrest, the warrior philosopher finds silence. His saber is sheathed at his side, and his shoulders remain squared in quiet vigilance. Along the curved stone walls, ancient runes shimmer faintly, etched in languages so old they are remembered only by the Force itself. These glyphs trace the legacies of masters long returned to the cosmic fold, each symbol a reminder that no Jedi stands alone. Every sentinel is the result of trials endured, knowledge preserved, and burdens carried by those who came before. A whisper of sandalwood lingers in the air, a scent chosen not for luxury, but for its meditative properties, clearing the mind before the strain of introspection and conflict. No sound breaks the chamber's stillness, save for Windu's steady breath. Each inhalation draws in quiet focus, each exhalation releases lingering doubt and distraction. His bare feet root him to the polished floor, his spine straight, hands at rest. Eyes closed, he lets the motes swirl around him, crimson embers echoing the latent shadow within, cerulean sparks dancing like fragments of light he labors to uphold. Varpad, the seventh and most perilous of the saber forms, is more than a martial technique. It is an inward path, a confrontation with the self. Where others fear to tread, Windu steps knowingly. The form demands not only finesse of motion, but strength of soul. It does not flee the storm. It invites it in and transforms it into clarity. Within his mind, visions surge forth unbidden. The thunderous arena on Geonosis, where roars of death and desperation tested his resolve. Moonless nights beneath Coruscant's skyline, where he meditated through the hum of distant speeders. The faint tremble in an enemy's saber hand, where he halted a lethal strike upon glimpsing fear in his opponent's eyes. It was in that suspended instant, saber poised, judgment withheld, that Windu understood the cost of mastery, not in victory, but in restraint, not in domination, but in compassion, tempered by confrontation. It is there that the true blade is drawn, not from the belt, but from within. He ignites his saber. A surge of violet brilliance erupts, splitting the darkness like a divine wound. The blade hums with resonance, harmonizing with the force. Crimson motes recoil at its emergence. Cerulean sparks pirouette, drawn to its light. With practiced precision, he moves through Varpad's flowing arcs. Each movement channels the chaotic energies of emotion and conflict into elegant, deliberate motion. When his pulse quickens at the pull of red glimmers, the lure of unchecked might, the blade's cool harmony steadies him, anchoring his spirit to truth. Every arc of his saber is a breath made visible, a pulse of energy rendered pure by discipline. The twist of his wrist, the shift of his stance, the narrowing of his gaze, each gesture honors the fragile line between protector and predator. Around him, the swirling motes become like adversaries, distractions, memories, regrets. He cuts through them not in rage, but in remembrance. His resolve is not to destroy, but to clarify. Moving through the signature stances, Windu transforms the dojo into an arena of internal reckoning. A sharp forward lunge becomes a meditative retreat. A sweeping cut becomes a gesture of grace. Red sparks rush to tempt his focus. Blue lights converge to offer calm. Between the two, he finds his rhythm, the living dance of light and shadow in balance. Cerulean filaments thread around his form, weaving an invisible cloak of serenity. In that suspended harmony, Windu becomes both sword and shield, both flame and stillness. The final flourish arrives, a seamless, circular arc of the saber, then stillness. His boots plant, the blade lowers, the violet hum fades into silence. Motes fall gently to the floor, like the settling of ash after a sacred fire. His breathing slows, deep and steady, each inhale a prayer of readiness, each exhale a release of fear. In the fragile quiet, the battle within him ceases, not in conquest, but in accord. Shadow and light meet not as enemies, but as twin truths of being. Even among the High Council, there are few who understand Varpad as Windu does. Most fear it, as they fear what lives within themselves. But Windu has made peace with the mirror. In his hands, the form proves that even those who know darkness can serve the light, if they carry compassion like a shield and discipline like a blade. His mastery is not the absence of darkness, but the refusal to be consumed by it. With his mind calm and purpose sharpened, Windu sheathes his saber. Dawn begins to thread through the windows, mingling with the lantern's final flicker. The shadows shrink, retreating into corners. He steps from solitude back into a galaxy unraveling, where Senate corridors echo with deception, where alliances fracture beneath false smiles. But his footing is steady, his path illuminated. He carries his balance like armor, and the war to come will test every inch of it. With dawn's amber rays weaving through towering spires, Master Windu descends from the solitude of his moonlit dojo to the Senate's high balcony. Before him stretches Coruscant's skyline, pulsing with ionic storms that shred the sky like silent sabers of white flame. Lightning cleaves distant clouds, revealing gleaming towers and layered traffic decks in sudden bursts of brilliance. He senses the city's heartbeat. Thrumming engines, distant sirens, whispers of ambition echoing through metal corridors. Far below, senatorial traffic hums beneath a veil of mist. Wind-battered banners cling to tall flagpoles, their frayed edges snapping like warnings against a sky still heavy with last night's torrent. He stands motionless, the weight of his convictions hanging like armor upon his shoulders. The Chancellor's dais looms at the heart of the Republic. A crystalline throne framed by soaring columns, its occupant cloaked in deep crimson. Palpatine's serene confidence radiates through Senate corridors, every gesture captured by holocameras in tinted projections. Yet beneath that genial facade, Windu senses an undercurrent of control, an influence wielded too smoothly, too assuredly. A clap of thunder rattles the platform, and Windu's hand drifts to the hilt of his lightsaber, not for combat, but as a reminder of his oath. His thoughts turn inward, recalling clandestine inquiries, forge-stamped amendments, rewriting policy to benefit shadowy trade syndicates, financial ledgers that vanish before meticulous audits, and secure transmissions abruptly severed when they carried too much truth. Each fragment hints at a tapestry of corruption concealed beneath procedural courtesy. He activates a concealed datapad, its pale glow casting violet reflections in his eyes. Encrypted transcripts fill the display, speeches laced with doublespeak, coded directives buried in innocuous clauses, and timestamps that coincide with communication blackouts. Windu cross-references sector reports. Power outages cluster around key votes, leaving some districts blind while others remain untouched. Corruption clothed in the guise of coincidence, an orchestra of shadows conducted by unseen hands. Memories of council debates flicker through his mind, impassioned pleas to grant Palpatine emergency powers for the sake of security, fraught discussions on preserving civil liberties during wartime, and the Chancellor's calm rebuttals that promised safety even as they eroded transparency. Windu had stood firm, warning that swift victories often sow the seeds of long-term tyranny. Yet each objection was met with diplomatic triumphs hailed as essential to the Republic's survival. He wonders now whether the foundations he swore to protect can endure so many compromises. Lightning rips the heavens once more, illuminating the Senate's domes and the endless ring of windows below. In that fleeting clarity, Windu envisions secret meetings in hidden alcoves, data ports shuttling illicit orders, and holocrons locked away in forbidden vaults. The Force whispers that knowledge is power, and power unchecked becomes oppression. He closes the datapad and steps back from the balustrade. The storm's distant echo mirrors his resolve. To expose a beloved Chancellor risks fracturing the galaxy, yet to remain silent allows tyranny to fester. Windu's purpose crystallizes. He will sift through every encrypted file, test each ally's loyalty, and cast light upon the Senate's hidden dealings. Below, delegates file into the chamber, their robes brilliant against polished marble. Windu slips into shadowed corridors, trusting the Force to guard his steps. He senses potential allies, archivists hoarding forgotten records, a handful of masters uneasy with unchallenged central authority, and Senate aides whose consciences strain beneath secrecy's weight. The sky continues to crackle, each bolt marking the hours in his clandestine vigil. As thunder finally subsides, Windu vanishes from the balcony and merges into the Senate's labyrinthine halls, every corridor a potential stage for diplomacy or deceit. His vigilance leads him to a confrontation to reshape the Republic and decide fates. Following his silent vigil through the Senate's winding corridors, Mace Windu arrives at the threshold of the Chancellor's private chamber. The heavy doors part at his presence, revealing an office bathed in the sickly glow of overhead lights and festooned with palatial tapestries. Every polished surface mirrors the tension that hangs as tautly as the night beyond Coruscant's upper spires. Inside, Chancellor Palpatine sits upon a throne-like dais, his expression one of feigned warmth. But in his eyes, Windu perceives the reflex of something darker, Sith cunning refined by decades of deceit. The air tastes of betrayal, thick with political ambition turned lethal. With focused calm, Windu draws his violet-hued blade, its hum slicing the air like a warning. In that moment, two destinies converge. Palpatine rises, his robes flowing as if stirred by unseen winds. He extends his hands, shadows coalescing around his fingers. Suddenly, crackling arcs of unnatural lightning leap forth, striking Windu with searing intensity. Yet the master of Varpad meets force with form, parrying the onslaught as violet blades clash against white-hot bolts. Their duel ignites the chamber, lightning dancing across statues and crystalline pillars. Every strike echoes the clash of ideals, light and darkness locked in mortal embrace. Windu counters with furious precision, each riposte fueled by years of disciplined training. When Palpatine's red lightsaber ignites, the two blades lock, humming with contradictory purpose. Sparks shower the dais as Windu's voice cuts through the roar. "Reveal yourself, Sith Lord. Your masquerade ends here." In a swift reversal, Windu severs the Sith's weapon arm, the crimson blade tumbling to the floor. Palpatine's crimson robe falls open to expose mortal flesh as he crumples to one knee. For a heartbeat, silence reigns. Windu kneels beside him, saber poised at the Chancellor's throat. Triumph tastes like bitter ash as he stands at the brink of justice. But fate's tapestry unravels in an instant. The doors burst open, and Anakin Skywalker storms in, desperation etched across his features. "Master Windu," he cries, "the Chancellor is too dangerous to be left alive." His plea trembles between loyalty and fear. Windu's reply is measured and cold. This is the end of his treachery. Anakin hesitates, torn between the mandates of the Council and his vow to protect his beloved mentor. A final flicker of lightning arcs from Palpatine's gauntlet, striking Windu with renewed ferocity. In that moment, Anakin unveils his fatal choice. With a swift stroke, he severs Windu's arm at the elbow, the violet saber slipping from numb fingers. The chamber's shattered window frames the severed limb, its jagged pane flecked with starlight and shards of glass, while lightning continues to crackle around the fallen Jedi. Windu crumples, pain and disbelief etched across his features. Palpatine's laughter rings hollow as he stands, blood darkening his lips. Anakin, chest heaving, looks upon his wounded master with a mix of triumph and horror, realizing too late the cost of his betrayal. Yet the Sith Lord's victory feels hollow as Darth Sidious strides forward, leaving Windu's broken form quivering amid splintered marble. In the hush that follows, Windu's voice emerges, quiet but unwavering. I failed you, Republic. But the light endures. His words drift into the night as guards rush through the open doorway. The Force shudders at this turning point, the moment when one hero falls and another's corruption seals the galaxy's fate. The stage is set for consequences that will echo across every star system. As guards storm the chamber, Windu summons the dwindling strength of the Force to align his focus. He watches Coruscant's twisted spires beyond the shattered window, each a silent witness to this betrayal. Yet even as darkness triumphs, his spirit clings to hope. The echo of his final vow resonates. Even in defeat, the spark of justice cannot be extinguished. In exile, his legend will grow in whispered tales across the galaxy. Emerging from the crucible of betrayal's final spark, Mace Windu is cast through the shattered window and into Coruscant's storm-racked sky. A lone figure in violet robes, he tumbles amid crackling lightning, the city's hum replaced by the roar of wind. Each bolt reveals his form in blinding clarity, and then plunges him back into darkness. Pain sears his armless side, yet beneath that agony, a quiet command resonates. Surrender not to despair, but to the Force's embrace. Spinning through the void between life and death, Windu's mind drifts through memory and instinct. He focuses on the ancient Jedi technique of Force slow fall, imagining the currents of power as gentle waves that could soften his descent. In moments of precarious calm, the storm's fury seems to ebb, and he glimpses Coruscant's upper atmosphere, a roiling sea of clouds fractured by electrical storms, vast and indifferent to any single life. The canon holds its silence. Official records mark Master Windu's last act at the duel's climax. No official testimony confirms his survival. This absence, vast as the void itself, has been filled by whispers in shadowed corners. Some claim a hidden holocron, sealed in Jedi vaults, contains his final testimony, a pulse of violet light, locked within layers of encryption. Others speak of Coruscant's undercity, neon-lit alleys, where a cloaked warrior once warded off thugs with a graceful thrust of purple blade. Across the galaxy, rumor threads grow. A spacer on Nar Shaddaa swears he saw a figure alight on a cantina roof, motionless beneath ionic storms. In the outer rim, an old merchant ship's log recorded an anomalous power signature near the planet Kesh, a faint echo of wind-swept robes and distant thunder. Fan forums speculate that Windu, guided by the living Force, found sanctuary on a forgotten moon, carving a refuge from which he watches the Republic's fate from afar. Even within the Jedi Order, debates simmer. Scholarly texts piece together environmental data, lightning patterns, atmospheric density, and impact velocity. Some masters argue that his mastery of Varpad allowed him to channel the storm's energy, dissipating lethal force before it could break his body. Others counter that Palpatine's Sith lightning and the Fall's ferocity would have shattered any vessel, mortal or Force-enhanced. These fragments of possibility merge into legend. Artistic renderings depict Windu resting beside a hidden shrine, his blade planted like a silent sentinel against a crimson sky. Holopoets draft verses in his honor, imagining his stoic silhouette standing atop Coruscant's highest spire, eyes fixed on distant horizons. Such creative eulogies transform uncertainty into hope, a testament to his enduring spirit. Yet for every hopeful tale, there is a sobering counterpoint. Imperial intelligence droids swore that no life signs emerged from the crash zone. Senate archives remain sealed, citing national security. No recorded recovery teams reported anything beyond shattered glass and scorched marble. These silences echo louder than any affirmation, reminding us that some questions linger without answer. And so, under storm-cleaved skies, Master Windu drifts between mortality and myth. His body plummets through thunderheads, his fate locked in the tension of unanswered possibility. Does he lie broken among Coruscant's underdecks? Or does he rise anew, reborn by the Force's vast currents? The riddle remains as charged as the air that bore him. Legends speak of tremors in the Force. Years later, Luke Skywalker told his students of an unresolved presence, a sentinel's breath carried on currents of the living Force. Such whispers claim Windu's spirit endures beyond mortal bounds, guiding those attuned to his spirit and everlasting memory. Transitioning from this unanswered descent, we turn from the storm's abyss to the silent void of the Jedi archives, where erased records and concealed transmissions await rediscovery. In the next chapter, we follow the whispers that echo in forgotten holocrons and sealed holowells, searching for clues to Windu's ultimate fate. After the shattered chamber's final echoes faded, official bulletins proclaimed Mace Windu dead, his hand lost and his fate sealed in Imperial files. Yet in Coruscant's hidden depths, another story took shape. Beneath neon arteries and roaring traffic stacks, whispers spoke of a cloaked silhouette slipping through dank corridors, a wounded master in violet robes, haunted by betrayal, moving with quiet purpose through the city's underbelly. No record describes that descent into exile. Security droids cleared crash debris and sealed the chamber, while Senate archives redacted every mention. But the Force cannot be confined by data cores or decrees. It stirred in sympathetic hearts, guiding hushed rumors that a lone Jedi emerged from wreckage, battered but unbowed, clutching a broken saber and an unbroken vow to survive. In the Undercity's labyrinth of maintenance shafts and sub-level plazas, a figure paused under flickering hollow screens. Ragged cloak conceals one arm, the other bearing scorched lines in frayed fabric. Every step carried weight, a blend of agony and resolve. He pressed against corroded bulkheads, drawing on memory of Jedi meditations, where stillness becomes armor against inner turmoil. Sightings surfaced like ember sparks. A spice runner in the works claimed to glimpse fleeting purple light in a side passage. A salvage team recorded anomalous power readings near a sealed transponder bay before Imperial schematics wiped their logs. Even an orphaned scavenger whispered of whispered coordinates etched in rushing code, leading to submerged quarters where no patrol ventured. Among refugee circles and spacer enclaves, travelers spoke of a hulking silhouette framed against steam vents, a figure gently righting a toppled work droid. Hollow forums buzzed with theories that Varpad's defining price carved scars deeper than flesh, and that Windu, emaciated yet unyielding, was forging new purpose in solitude. Artists sketched his form perched upon rusted generators, glow against oblivion. Such stories entwined hope with memory. In each alcove, he pressed a scarred palm to cold metal walls, feeling the Force's faint heartbeat echo through girders. That distant pulse reminded him that even in exile, his path remained bound to the Republic's fate. Haunted by grief, Windu sought refuge in a decaying sub-level chapel. Ancient hololithic shrines glowed faintly under dust and neglect, There he knelt before fractured idols, mourning every life lost. Each breath a prayer for the republic he could no longer serve. Yet guilt yielded to purpose when Master Yoda's counsel echoed in his mind. Renewed strength we find not in what was, but what may become. By night, he scavenged supplies, binding ragged cloth around wounds that refused to heal. With each layer of bandage, he stitched determination into flesh. When dawn's dull light seeped through grated vents, he slipped back into shadows, determined to deny the Empire their final victory over his will. Unexpected allies emerged. A former Jedi archivist, keeper of erased transmissions, hid him among sealed hollowells. A remorseful clone trooper, haunted by fractured memory, risked retaliation to guide him through patrol routes. A smuggler, driven by lost honor, stored a hidden berth on a freighter bound for distant moonlight enclaves. Their faith in his return became a chorus echoing through tunnels. Amid that clandestine world, Windu wrestled with doubt. Would his shattered form ever bind again? Could he confront the galaxy's ruin with one arm and a fractured blade? He focused on the Force's steady pulse, using every practiced breath to ground his spirit. Each heartbeat reaffirmed his promise. Exile would serve not as oblivion, but as crucible for rebirth. So he remained, a ghost in violet robes beneath Coruscant's layered decks, a wounded sentinel refusing to fade. For in the hush of the Undercity, his echo persists. An enduring vow that wherever darkness lingers, Mace Windu will rise once more. From this hidden vigil, Next Path delves into the Jedi Archive's silent vaults, where erased records and concealed transmissions hold the next clues to Windu's legacy. The galaxy above Coruscant shifted. Star destroyers prowled like leviathans through a smog-stained sky, their shadows cast wide across the city's towers. TIE fighters screamed through upper corridors, shrill and proud, a sound that once warned of war, but now whispered permanence. Below them, draped in the concealment of altitude and silence, a figure watched. High atop a forgotten spire, long eclipsed by newer skylanes and sealed from public use, Mace Windu stood, his presence hidden in darkened corners between wind and memory. Cloaked in dusk, one arm folded beneath layers of coarse fabric, the other gripping the rusted edge of durasteel railing, he became part of the skyline itself. In this perch above the world, he tracked the movements of his enemies. Beneath him, the Senate no longer debated. It echoed with the unquestioned voice of Palpatine, now Emperor, whose words masked imperial decrees with the pretense of peace. Windu had once stood in that chamber, bathed in golden light, his violet blade a symbol of uncompromising justice. But now, his blade remained sheathed in shadow. The war was over. The Jedi were gone. And yet, he remained, unseen, unwelcome, unfinished. He did not speak. He listened. Every whisper of corruption, every secret shuttle entering the Emperor's tower, every rise in security activity near the grand convocation chambers. Windu watched, not as a warrior, but as a sentry. His vantage points changed often: abandoned rooftops, sealed industrial chimneys, obsolete antenna platforms, but his gaze never faltered. Then came Vader. Windu saw him first as a silhouette descending Palpatine's private shuttle. Armor black as midnight, cape drawn in imperial precision, his breath a mechanical wound. The former Anakin Skywalker, who had once knelt in grief and conflict, now walked in obedience and ruin. Windu tracked his movements, always from afar, curious, anguished, never intervening. Not yet. Each time Vader appeared, Windu recalled the moment of betrayal, the heat of seared flesh, the shock of lightsaber slicing trust in two. But rage had cooled to something colder. Purpose. He did not seek revenge. He sought equilibrium. If the Jedi Order was gone, then someone must remain. Not to strike from the shadows, but to ensure that shadows did not consume all. He scouted Imperial databanks. He infiltrated encrypted communications using obsolete Jedi clearance codes long assumed dead. From these, he pieced together patterns, like a hunter reading prints in the dust. Slaves rerouted to unknown sectors. Jedi artifacts collected under the guise of cultural preservation. Outer Rim uprisings crushed before they even sparked. From these fragments, Windu sensed the rising tide of tyranny. The people could not see it. Not yet. They saw peace. Order. A galaxy stilled beneath the Empire's iron touch. But Windu had seen peace bought with fear before. He had watched as bureaucrats cheered while liberty crumbled beneath ceremonial robes. That lesson had come too late. He would not make that mistake again. In secret, he drafted contingency signals, encoded warnings to any who might awaken. He carved messages in obsolete languages into antenna pylons, broadcast short bursts of encrypted Jedi mantras across ghost comm channels, left tracer glyphs across old outposts. They were seeds. He planted them for a time when the galaxy would listen again. Each evening, he returned to the heights. One particular ledge became his sanctum, where he'd stand as Imperial fleets patrolled above. There, he would close his eyes and reach out with the Force, not seeking power, but presence. Somewhere in that darkened ocean, he felt flickers. A boy running on Lothal, a scavenger in Jakku's dunes, an old friend still breathing in exile. The Empire did not know he was alive. Perhaps even the Force questioned if he remained. But in those silent hours above a sleeping city, Mace Windu watched. He had no temple, no council, no title, only the vow he made long ago to defend life against darkness, even in silence, especially in silence. Yet even as he observed, he knew silence could not last. Shadows lengthen before they break, and from the stillness of his vigil, he felt it stirring. A tension in the Force, a tremor that would call him not just to witness, but to choose. Thus begins the slow burn of conflict within him once more. A fire tempered by wisdom, stoked by loss, and soon tested by mercy. The wind howled across the old temple grounds, now scarred by blaster fire and the slow erosion of time. Crumbled stones once shaped into hallowed arches now lay strewn like fallen memories. Where once Padawans walked in contemplation, weeds pushed through fractured stone. The temple had not burned, it had been silenced. And in that stillness, Mace Windu knelt. Before him stood what remained of a statue, once a symbol of Jedi wisdom, now faceless, eroded, its robes chipped and bowed. Its outstretched hand, which once welcomed seekers of the Force, had broken at the wrist, fingers scattered at its base like discarded truths. Windu placed his gloved palm upon the pedestal and bowed his head. He came here rarely. Each visit was a trial, and each departure left a deeper wound. But the temple was part of him. He had risen within its walls, taught within its chambers. dreamed within its silence. Now it stood as an echo, and each echo called him to confront what the galaxy had become and what he had not prevented. The Jedi Code taught serenity, detachment, discipline. But beneath Windu's still surface, the weight of all he had lost pressed down like the shattered duracrete around him. He had sensed the darkness festering long before it revealed itself, but he had not stopped it. He had fought Sidious and nearly triumphed. And yet, here he was, hiding in ruins, while the Sith reigned. The Force pulsed through the air, faint but enduring. He reached into it, not with command, but with questioning. And in that communion, the conflict within him stirred once more. He had followed the code all his life, lived it, carried it into battle. But when Anakin betrayed him, when justice slipped through his fingers like the Coruscant rain, he had been changed. Something in him fractured, not into darkness, but into doubt. Each time he saw Vader walk beneath the Imperial banners, each time he heard of another world subjugated, Windu felt the burn of choice. He had the power to act, to strike from the shadows, to become what the Jedi never dared become, a weapon without restraint. But with that power came the question that haunted him. Was vengeance justice? He had taken life before, on battlefields, in duels. He had cut down those who threatened the peace. But this was different. Now there was no counsel, no witness, no oversight. Only him, and the line he had walked so carefully all his life, now blurred beneath his feet. In moments like this, kneeling at the ruins of his past, he returned to the words of Master Yoda. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. But what if defense required preemptive action? What if the last hope of balance rested not in peace, but in confrontation? He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. Through the Force, he searched for clarity. He found only silence and the distant ripple of pain across the galaxy. He remembered the younglings, the archives, the voices that once filled these halls. He had failed them, not by losing, but by surviving. That guilt, unspoken and unshared, clung to him like ash. But still, the code held him, not as a chain, but as a compass. Broken though the order might be, its ideals remained a light in the dark. If he surrendered to vengeance, he would not be Mace Windu. He would be a blade without a hilt, a force unanchored. And that, he knew, was the Sith's path. So he stood. The statue remained broken. The temple remained dead. But Windu did not kneel in defeat. He knelt in choice. And as he turned from the ruin and disappeared into the shadows once more, he carried not a lust for retribution, but a scar, a silent vow etched across his soul, to act only when action aligned with purpose, to strike only when it preserved life, and to remember that mercy, though harder than rage, was the truer strength. Ahead of him lay paths untouched, whispers of lives not yet lost, of Force sensitives hidden beyond the Empire's reach. His story was not over, and in the hollow left by war, he would pass on what remained. A new chapter was beginning, not of vengeance, but of legacy, long after the temple fell, long after Mace Windu disappeared from the corridors of recorded history. Whispers endured. They flickered like candlelight on cold stone, quiet, persistent, and impossible to fully extinguish. Names faded, statues crumbled, but the stories lingered, passed from voice to voice in forgotten corners of the galaxy, far from the reach of imperial censors. Some claimed to have seen him in shadowed places, on war-torn planets, or standing at the edge of storms like a sentinel of myth. Others dismissed it all as legend, a comfort story told by the desperate. But beneath the surface of the galaxy, away from prying eyes and imperial probes, the truth breathed quietly. Mace Windu was not just surviving, he was teaching. His vow, etched not into parchment or archive, but at the broken feet of a shattered statue deep within a temple ruin, had not been a retreat. It was a redirection, a redefinition of what it meant to serve. No longer bound to the Senate's faltering machinery, no longer beholden to the crumbling bureaucracy of the Jedi Order that had been seduced into war, Windu walked a different path, a quieter one. He wandered from system to system, guided not by command but by intuition, drawn by undercurrents in the Force that few could sense and fewer dared to follow. He listened, he observed, and when he found potential, no matter how faint, no matter how hidden, he acted. On the farthest edges of the outer rim, nestled in the hushed valleys of forgotten moons, or cloaked within tectonic caverns beyond the reach of satellites, he established no temples. He raised no banners. Instead, he cultivated silence. Where the old order had taught tradition, he offered truth. Where once there had been doctrine, he instilled instinct. There were no classes, no holocrons, no grand proclamations, no councils, no braids, no formal ranks or titles, just the Force, and those willing to open themselves to it. His students were as varied as the stars. Some were orphans found beneath the wreckage of cities burned by civil war. Others were farmers who moved through their fields with uncanny grace. Laborers who could feel when storms were coming before clouds even gathered. Refugees whose instincts had saved them time and again without knowing why. Many had never heard the word Jedi, and Windu never asked them to adopt it. The Jedi title, once revered, had become a tool for control or a death sentence. Titles had failed the galaxy. What mattered now was action. He trained them in the quiet places, natural sanctuaries lit only by dappled sunlight or the faint shimmer of bioluminescent moss. When needed, the violet flare of his saber lit the dark. But it was never a display of dominance. It was a beacon, a symbol of presence, of balance held in tension. The amethyst glow did not command. It invited. Reflected in the smooth walls of cave and canyon, it became a visible breath, a pulse of thought echoing outward. He taught them to feel their breath as part of the world around them, to listen to the way water dripped through stone, to hear the pulse of insects in the soil, to sense the rhythms of life in the quietest movements. Combat only came after stillness. Power was tempered by humility. Precision was born of patience. And unlike the rigid structures of the temple he had once called home, these teachings did not elevate him. He did not take on the role of master. Not anymore. Here, among the quiet and the forgotten, he was something else. A guide, a shadow, perhaps even a ghost. He would arrive. He would teach. And when the moment came, often without warning, he would disappear, leaving behind only echoes. His students often didn't even know his name. Some called him the Walker. Others whispered of the man with the purple fire. One described him only as the figure with eyes that never blinked. In every system he touched, his passage left no trail, only change. Windu knew the Empire was watching, knew their inquisitors scoured the stars for force-sensitive children, knew they hunted not only light, but potential. His secrecy was his shield, and theirs. So he taught them how to hide, not just from the Empire, but from the pull of their own power. He taught them to become the stillness in the storm, to let the darkness rush by, untouched. But more than anything, he taught them choice. The Jedi of old had taken children too young to choose, molding them into tools for a cause they barely understood. Windu had once believed in that cause. Now he saw the flaw. These new souls, these students, had lived first. They had lost. They had struggled. Only then were they shown the ways of the Force. That pain, that history, gave their journey meaning. Each night, as he stood watch on the edge of some distant world, the stars above would blur into rivers of silver light. And in those silent hours, Windu would meditate, not for guidance, but for grounding. He was no longer a general, no longer a counselor. He was a steward of fire, keeping it alive one ember at a time. His legacy, then, would never be found in archives. It lived in movement, in whispered teachings passed from traveler to traveler, in children who paused before they acted, in those who, even in silence, stood against fear. And as the violet blade flickered briefly in the heart of a cave, the galaxy, unaware, remembered what hope could look like. In the silence left behind by his passing through the stars, the galaxy shifted. Though Windu taught in secret and fought in shadows, the Empire moved in plain sight, brazen in its conquest. For every ember he kindled in the hearts of the lost and the hunted, they swept their cold veil wider, choking out hope with policies and proclamations. And when his name was spoken, if it was spoken, it was only in vanishing whispers, like a memory resisting death. Because by the time the smoke of the Clone Wars settled and the Jedi Order lay in ruins, Mace Windu had become more than missing. He had become erased. Within the vast, flickering halls of the newly repurposed Imperial Archives, once the luminous heart of Jedi knowledge and tradition, his name no longer appeared in Council records. Datapads that had once chronicled his rise, his teachings and his philosophies now returned only error messages. His missions were redacted, his battlefield reports corrupted, his recorded dialogues overwritten with static. His violet-bladed victories became corrupted entries marked with crimson alerts, flagged for deletion. The purge enacted by Order 66 had been more than a physical extinction. It was informational, a calculated campaign of annihilation not only against bodies, but against memory. Beneath Coruscant's durasteel skin, buried in climate-sealed data vaults where archivist droids once glided between pillars of humming crystal cores, the files that once documented Windu's legacy sputtered like dying stars. Access codes failed. Holos flickered and froze. Mission logs showed gaps where there had once been brilliance. Historians began reporting anomalies, missing timestamps, corrupted transcripts, unexplained voids in tactical command logs where Windu's unmistakable signature had once dominated. But these deletions bore an unusual precision. Other fallen Jedi were marked with ruthless clarity, condemned as traitors, labeled and catalogued. Their faces adorned Imperial bounty terminals, their affiliations mapped, their fates sealed by digital ink. But Windu's record was empty. No obituary, no holonet transmission declaring his death, no wanted alert. no reward offered. He was not confirmed killed, nor hunted. He had become a non-entry, a ghost file, no longer listed among masters, no longer mentioned in rosters, vanished from every battlefield summary where he had once stood at the vanguard, shoulder to shoulder with legends. It was as if he had never existed at all. But why? Some within the Imperial Information Bureau, analysts, slicers, truth sensors, whispered among themselves in encrypted channels. Theories took root. Palpatine, now Emperor, had seen Windu's eyes in those final moments. The defiance, the certainty, the storm barely contained behind his gaze. The violet blade had pushed the Dark Lord to the brink of death. And for a breathless second, the Sith had felt fear, not of pain, not of failure, but of a man who, even as he fell, embodied a truth the dark could not consume. A man like that could not be remembered. He was too dangerous to immortalize. Erasure then became the weapon. If Windu's legacy could not be rewritten, it would be buried, not honored, not vilified, forgotten. No monument, no cautionary tale, just a hollow where greatness once moved. And so, the machinery turned. Droids were reprogrammed. Holocrons that contained echoes of his voice were shattered quietly. Statues that bore his likeness in the inner courts of the Jedi Temple were pulverized into dust, replaced with the sterile symmetry of the New Order. Hollow terminals would pause, hesitate, then load only blank pages where Windu's entries had once stood. An archivist reported accessing a sector deep within Jedi historicals, only to find a star map filled with fractured nodes, coordinates blinking like phantom beacons, leading nowhere. Each trail led to silence. The Emperor called it data optimization. But in truth, it was censorship wrapped in protocol, deletion disguised as system maintenance, a soft genocide of memory. And yet, absence can be louder than presence. Among the rebellion's hidden scholars and surviving Padawans, a new curiosity emerged. Some noticed the pattern, a missing council seat that was never filled, battle reports with tactical victories, but no listed commander, audio logs that ended mid-transmission, as if someone had cut them off just before the name could be spoken. They began to search, not always for Windu himself, but for the shape of the hole he had left behind. They traced rumors, whispered reports of violet light on distant moons. They walked the ash-covered ruins of temples on outer rim worlds where his saber had once sung. They found inconsistencies, data mismatches, encrypted caches sealed with ancient Jedi codes. One slicer claimed to have found a file labeled only with the letter W, its contents scrambled, its metadata locked behind triple encrypted Sith firewalls. The silence, some said, was too perfect, too complete. And in that completeness was fear. And perhaps that fear was the greatest testament to his power. The Emperor could destroy temples. He could turn knights into hunters, could brand the Jedi traitors and rewrite the galaxy's history with iron precision. But even with all his tools, he could not risk Mace Windu enduring in memory, not even as a cautionary ghost. For Windu's defiance, at the edge of death, had been too pure. His conviction had burned too brightly. And so Mace Windu became a ghost, not only in the flesh, but in the record. He became an absence that defied silence, a whisper in a slicer's corrupted hollow, a gap in a scholar's star chart, a pause before a name no one dared speak aloud, where the archives went silent. The Force whispered, and through that whisper, the legend endured. In the long shadow cast by the fall of empires and the quiet rise of the New Republic, names began to fade. Some slipped gently into obscurity. Others were lifted high as rallying cries. But Mace Windu became something else entirely. He became legend. To those who survived the darkness, Windu's memory lingered not in public ceremonies or marble halls, but in the small, flickering corners of a reborn galaxy. Outposts where whispers meant more than proclamations, where silence often told the truest stories. His name was seldom spoken, but always felt. And in the new Jedi enclaves, where future knights were taught by torchlight and truth, his story endured like breath drawn in a moment of stillness. There, beneath starlight filtered through treetop canopies, or within hidden caverns carved into ancient stone, young Padawans would sometimes gather around dim holoprojectors. Their mentors, robes worn and voices hushed, would cue up a relic. And on rare nights, one recording would be shown, a fragment salvaged from the wreckage of the temple archives. It did not show a face, nor a full battle, only a moment. A figure standing firm, a violet blade held against a storm of lightning, a body braced not in rage, but in resolve. And then, static. End of record. That was all. Yet it was enough. To the young, it was a lesson. To the old, a wound. For some, Windu represented the last time the Jedi stood unflinching before the abyss and did not blink. For others, he was a warning. That power, no matter how righteously wielded, can be shattered by betrayal. To a few, he was both. Caution and courage made flesh. But to all, he was mystery. Luke Skywalker, the quiet architect of the New Order, spoke of Windu with reverence and restraint. He was the sword, Luke once told a gathering of learners beneath the twin moons of Ossus. But even a sword must choose not to strike. That was Windu's burden, and his gift. To hold the storm within, to master the fire without letting it consume. Among the new generation, Windu's story became a fire passed hand to hand. A Padawan struggling with their anger might be told of Vapad, the form that danced with darkness without inviting it in. A knight weary of war might be reminded that Windu walked alone, not to isolate, but to shield others from the fury he carried in silence. A learner plagued by doubt might hear how Windu, too, questioned the order, and still chose to serve. Even his absence held weight. There were no shrines, no graves. His body was never found. Some claimed he lived still, wandering the outer rim as a silent sentinel, watching without interfering. Others said he became one with the Force in that final, fatal moment, his spirit dissolving into the ether like mist before sunrise. The new Jedi did not ask for certainty. They understood that legends need not end to matter. Sometimes the open ending was the lesson. In murals painted on stone walls of new temples, some grown from roots, others hewn from ice, Windu appeared not as a conqueror, but as a guardian. His blade was always drawn in defense, never aggression. His eyes looked forward, unwavering. In deep meditations, his name was evoked not as a command, but as an invocation of balance. In dreams shared through the Force, he walked beside the lost, not as a ghost, but as a guide. He had no tomb, yet everywhere he was remembered, a violet light seemed to linger, not bright, but present, a soft shimmer in the mist, a flicker in the flames, a quiet presence felt beside rivers where Jedi now meditate, a presence that didn't speak, but steadied. And so, Mace Windu passed into myth, not because he vanished, but because what he represented could not be erased. His story became the line between justice and vengeance, between silence and strength. A question every Jedi must ask: how far will I go, and will I return? Sometimes it was the youngest among them who understood him best, not through history or analysis, but through feeling. A Padawan would watch that final recording, not for the saber, not for the strike, but for the stillness before it, for the moment of decision, for the choice to stand, knowing the cost. Because in that stillness, the future breathes. And in that breath, Windu lives on, not in statues or scrolls, but in every Jedi who walks into conflict, carrying not pride, but purpose. He is not only a memory. He is a question posed by the Force itself. Can power serve without corrupting? Can fury be held without burning? Windu's story becomes myth, his survival unconfirmed, his path a silent sentinel over a changed galaxy. Now, we turn to the Jedi whose voice still echoes through the living Force, shaping destinies long after his passing. Master Qui-Gon Jinn. Where Windu's legacy became legend through resistance, Qui-Gon Jinn's began long before wars or betrayals, born not in defiance, but in quiet divergence. He walked the same marble floors of the Jedi Temple, stood beneath the same towering statues of valor and enlightenment, yet something in him moved differently. Even in youth, Qui-Gon's gaze was not fixed upon the future the Council sought to shape, but on the present. The Force was already whispering. He listened. While others debated doctrine in council chambers gilded with ancient certainty, Qui-Gon wandered the deeper halls, into libraries few remembered, archives older than Republic records, meditation chambers carved before the light of Coruscant's first sunrise. There, among dust-laced tomes and forgotten scrolls, he would pace in thought, fingers trailing along symbols of a time when Jedi sought harmony not with institutions, but with breath, moment, and motion. He did not reject the code. He respected it. But to Qui-Gon, the code was a map, not a cage. The living Force, immediate, instinctual, raw, called to him. It surged in the laughter of a child, the hush of a dying leaf, the breath between words. It shimmered in the heat above market stalls, trembled in the cries of beasts at night. It did not wait for the future. It pulsed now, here. And it was this awareness that shaped his every choice and set him at odds with those who called themselves his masters. The Council called him stubborn. They said he lacked discipline, that his trust in visions made him reckless. But Qui-Gon did not rebel to provoke. He simply believed there was more to the Force than rules could hold. He saw through ceremony, beyond custom. He believed the Force had no interest in status, only sincerity. He walked alone often, his cloak whispering over temple stone, his footsteps echoing through corridors meant for silence. Other knights found comfort in consensus. Qui-Gon found clarity in solitude. He believed the Force was not a hierarchy, but a river, always moving, always asking to be followed, not commanded. And in this, he was a contradiction the Council could not reconcile. He trained students but let them question. He honored the code but placed conscience above compliance. He obeyed until obedience strayed too far from truth. He taught not with rigid structure, but through presence, through example. He let his actions speak, even when his words were few. Some admired him. Others feared the precedent he set. But none could ignore the results. He resolved conflicts others escalated. He calmed disputes with a word where others drew sabers. He touched the lives of strangers with the same attention he gave galactic politics. Because to Qui-Gon, no life was minor, no presence meaningless. In one lesser-known dispute over planetary mining rights, he spent 3 days in meditation beside a river where miners and farmers gathered. He listened not to leaders, but to their children. And through that listening, he resolved the dispute with no battle, no force, just presence. The council never praised the outcome, but the people never forgot. And there were others. A tribal feud quelled not by intervention, but by sharing firelight and stories under the stars. A wayward senator steered back from corruption not by threat, but by a single conversation. Qui-Gon's power came not from dominance, but from the willingness to pause, to notice what others dismissed. His relationship with the council frayed over time. They viewed his independence as dangerous, a destabilizing element in a time already tipping toward war. He saw their concern. He did not resent it, but neither did he yield. He knew what they could not admit, that the Force did not always move in consensus. Sometimes it moved in contradiction, and only those willing to listen in silence could follow it. And so he walked, through archives where holocrons no longer glowed, through gardens no longer tended. Alone, but not isolated. His solitude was a communion, and in that communion, he found something purer than any rank: peace. He would not become Grand Master. He would not ascend through the Order. He would remain where the Force led him, in the moment, in the breath, in the choice. And so began the path less traveled. It would lead him to Tatooine, to a boy no one believed in, to a prophecy no one accepted. But that is still to come. For now, we walk beside him in the quiet halls, where his boots touch stone worn smooth by centuries, and his presence stirs dust into memory. Not in rebellion, in trust. From the quiet halls of the Jedi Temple to the endless sands of Tatooine, Qui-Gon's journey followed the living Force without map or mandate. He was not sent to seek a savior. He was sent to negotiate for a broken ship. But the Force does not speak in orders. It nudges gently but insistently until one has no choice but to listen. And on Tatooine, in the heart of a desert world untouched by Republic reach, it whispered louder than ever before. Mos Espa was dust and barter, oppression and survival. A place where power wore chains and hope was traded like currency. Qui-Gon felt it the moment he stepped off the ramp, the imbalance, the weight of futures untold. And in that weight, something stirred. They found him in a shop, a boy no more than 9, with eyes like rising stars, and a question already blooming behind them. Anakin Skywalker, slave, mechanic, pilot, and something more, something the Force curled around, as if protecting its own secret. Qui-Gon knelt, not in awe, but in understanding. He asked questions not out of curiosity, but reverence. The boy's answers came not from pride, but from instinct. He could feel things, build things, race faster than logic allowed. And though he did not know it, The Force moved through him like breath, untamed, unharnessed, boundless. The Jedi Master's thoughts did not leap to prophecy. They rested in presence. But that night, beneath twin suns melting into the dune sea, he sat in meditation and listened. The wind brushed past his robes. The sand cooled beneath him. And the Force, it did not offer clarity. It offered direction. It pointed to the boy. He is the one. The words did not flash in vision. They arrived as certainty, as if the galaxy had always known and only now remembered. Others saw a child. Qui-Gon saw the pattern. He had the boy tested. Midi-chlorian count, unprecedented. Over 20,000, higher than even Master Yoda. He told the council, and they frowned. Too old, too uncertain, too afraid. But Qui-Gon knew that fear could not be reason to deny truth. The living Force did not wait for comfort. He believed. Not blindly, but wholly. Because when Qui-Gon looked at Anakin, he did not see the boy alone. He saw what might be, what needed to be. A future not yet written, but aching to unfold. He saw balance. And perhaps more importantly, he saw someone who needed to be seen. In private, he told Obi-Wan, "He is the chosen one. You must see it." And when the boy turned from the window to meet his eyes, Qui-Gon understood that his place in this story was not to control it, but to protect its beginning. He freed him. Not from slavery alone, but from obscurity. He brought him aboard, gave him a name that mattered in the light. He promised him more than freedom. He promised belief. And for the first time, Anakin Skywalker felt chosen not by prophecy, but by presence. The council resisted. They warned of danger. Qui-Gon did not dismiss their caution. He acknowledged it. But still, he stood firm. "He is the one," he said again. "You must train him." But fate has its own designs. Qui-Gon would not live to see the boy's path fully unfold. His part was only the first step, the hand offered in the dark, the voice that said yes when others said no. And as the ship rose from Tatooine's surface, slicing through cloud and heat, Qui-Gon watched the desert fade behind them. Anakin stood beside him, quiet, uncertain, looking out toward stars he had only dreamed of. The future shimmered. The Force pulsed. And two suns set behind the kneeling figure, who had bent not for ritual, but for revelation. The twin suns of Tatooine faded beneath the ship's hull, as Qui-Gon's thoughts drifted to what lay ahead. Naboo's green fields and silvered lakes awaited them, but a deeper summons echoed in the Force. Leaving Anakin's silent question behind, Qui-Gon drew his robes tight and allowed the hum of the ship's engines to settle his mind. Nothing could have prepared him for the darkness rising on the horizon, or for the shadow that would test his every skill. They descended through tranquil clouds into a shattered world. A separatist blockade choked the skies, and city towers smoldered from repeated bombardment. Landing gear groaned as the Jedi cruiser settled in Theed's scarred royal plaza. Guards had fallen back, and civilians huddled behind barricades. A message crackled. Queen Amidala had been captured and was en route to a distant reactor. Duty demanded swift action. Without hesitation, Qui-Gon ignited his lightsaber, its green blade casting steady light over broken marble and fractured fountains. Obi-Wan Kenobi leapt from the ship moments later, sabers drawn. He raced through crumbled colonnades toward the reactor access tunnels. Somewhere in the labyrinth, he knew Maul waited, hungry for revenge and eager to extinguish the Jedi line. Every corridor seemed alive, walls vibrating with residual heat and seething hate. Obi-Wan's breath steadied. Each footstep echoed the training he had endured. He would face Maul alone if he must, but he pressed on, determined to reunite with his master at the crucible of fate. Maul emerged from the shadows, twin blades whirling like deadly petals. His horns glinted with hatred, and every strike carried the promise of death. Qui-Gon met him in the open plaza, blade crackling in defiance of the dark. They clashed beneath fallen statues, sparks spraying into the night air. Lightning flickered overhead, matching the rhythm of their duel. Qui-Gon's form was measured, deliberate, each motion a testament to centuries of Jedi tradition. But Maul fought with feral fury, twisting unpredictably, each blow a bid for supremacy. They danced across broken tiles, weapons singing in unison. Qui-Gon sought to disarm, to end the conflict swiftly. Maul's strikes, however, were relentless. A misstep sent Qui-Gon stumbling, and Maul's blade flashed toward his chest. The Force slowed the strike but could not halt its momentum. Qui-Gon deflected, pivoting on one foot, then countered with a sweep beneath Maul's guard. For a heartbeat, the world paused. Shadows and light intertwined in a single moment of creation and destruction. In that moment, Obi-Wan arrived. The young knight's eyes met Maul's, then Qui-Gon's. He raised his green saber alongside his master's staff and plunged into the fray. Maul roared, shifting focus, but lost his opening as both Jedi pressed him. Sparks froze mid-air around Qui-Gon as he advanced, blade slicing fresh arcs across Maul's offense. Yet in the next instant, a hidden joint betrayed him. Maul spun free and felled Qui-Gon with a single strike to the abdomen. Qui-Gon staggered, his lightsaber extinguishing as he fell to one knee. Maul's double blade whipped upward for the final kill, but Obi-Wan interposed himself, slicing the Sith warrior's saber in two. Maul howled, retreating into the palace shadows with a promise of return. Obi-Wan dropped to his master's side as Qui-Gon's breath ragged. The wind of battle stilled, leaving only the crackle of broken crystal and a life slipping away beneath a veil of sparks. Obi-Wan pressed his ear to his master's chest, listening for the spark that signified life. Qui-Gon's eyes fluttered open, his last words fragile. "Train the boy. He will bring balance." His hand went limp, and the green glow faded from his fallen saber. Obi-Wan bowed his head against the hushed marble, tears silent. The galaxy had lost not only a master, but the living Force's voice. In that echo of loss, a new journey began, for both knight and child. The sands of Naboo would remember this day forever, as legend took its breath. In the aftermath of Naboo's storm, silence settled like dust across the fields of broken stone. Obi-Wan, bowed by loss and duty, felt a gentle tug in the Force, an invitation beyond mortal horizons. Years later, on a mist-soaked world, that whisper found him once more. Dagobah's swamp clung to his senses, each breath rich with decay and promise. He navigated twisted routes toward a broad, ancient tree crowned by drifting vapor. Beneath its boughs, the air shimmered with silent anticipation. Obi-Wan extended a hand through the humid twilight and spoke the name he carried in his heart. Master Qui-Gon. Within the haze, a face emerged, calm, luminous, and ageless. Qui-Gon's features, carved from moonlight, drifted forth. His voice, tranquil and eternal, wove through the fog like wind through reeds. "Obi-Wan, you have traveled far," the spirit murmured. "Your path bears heavy weight, yet you stand unbroken." Obi-Wan bowed his head, heart tightening. How can one remain whole after such loss? Qui-Gon's form drifted closer, mist swirling around his robes. "Through surrender," he advised. "Release sorrow into the current of the Force. Let it refine your purpose, not shatter your heart." Around them, bioluminescent spores danced, responding to the quiet resonance of his words. Obi-Wan inhaled, feeling clarity bloom within him. Qui-Gon's guidance shimmered like dawn's first light on still water, subtle, essential. "You taught Yoda these rites," Obi-Wan said softly. "He carries your lesson forward." A flicker passed through the apparition, as though memory stirred beneath its surface. "Yes," Qui-Gon replied. "Seek him when your burden grows too great. Together you will find strength in unity." The mist thickened, weaving shapes into shadows of possibility. As swiftly as he appeared, Qui-Gon's visage dissolved into the swamp's breath. Obi-Wan remained kneeling beneath the silent canopy, the echo of his master's voice, a lantern in the encroaching dark. Time flowed on, and the galaxy shifted under Palpatine's shadow. Obi-Wan stood vigil on Tatooine, guarding a farm boy's destiny. Some nights, when twin suns had set and stars unveiled their tapestry, a breeze would whisper across the dunes. He would pause, recalling Dagobah's glow, and feel that presence in the currents. Across Coruscant's lofty spires, another soul wrestled with doubt. Master Yoda, exiled and frail, studied ancient scrolls in the great temple's twilight. Questions of survival and legacy weighed on him. One dawn, compelled by an impulse older than memory, he closed his eyes and exhaled into the Force. In the silence, a presence gathered, familiar, comforting, resolute. Qui-Gon's voice, carried through time's currents, spoke in a tone both gentle and unwavering. "Master Yoda," it breathed, "your journey is not alone. In the living Force, past and present converge. Trust what you cannot see." Yoda's breathing slowed, and the temple's marble walls seemed to expand into infinity. He nodded to the unseen guide, clarity blooming like sunrise. He returned to his studies with quiet conviction. Far beyond the core, Jedi in hiding found solace in unexpected moments. A Padawan on Dantooine heard a whisper as she meditated beneath twin moons. A hermit knight on Ryloth sensed a soothing murmur amid a sandstorm. Each later recounted an uncanny calm that steadied their blade when hope seemed lost. Thus, though Qui-Gon's mortal flame had dimmed on Naboo, his spirit fanned the embers of countless hearts. His voice in the mist became a beacon, a reminder that death is but a transformation, and guidance endures for those who dare to listen. His legacy flows in whispered hearts. The whisper in the mist had become a gentle current, guiding two weary Jedi masters to a hidden sanctuary. Where Dagobah's swamp tangled beneath a sky of dying stars, Qui-Gon awaited amidst an ethereal glade bathed in twilight. Silver shafts of moonlight filtered through gnarled branches, casting shifting patterns on moss-soft ground. Frogs crooned in hushed chorus, and unseen streams sang along. Here, borders between life and spirit thinned, inviting passage beyond mortal bounds. Obi-Wan Kenobi stepped forward first, heart heavy with the weight of a galaxy lost. His robe, faded from years of exile, trailed through damp earth. Beside him, Master Yoda's gait, though slowed by age, remained unbowed. Both had come seeking solace, but here, foresight awaited. From the shadows, a form emerged. Qui-Gon's visage, serene yet charged with purpose, wreathed in pale luminescence. His eyes held the wisdom of horizons beyond human sight. No words were needed. His aura conveyed renewal. "Masters," he spoke softly, voice rippling like wind-stirred reeds, "you have carried grief as burden. Now learn to transcend flesh and time." He beckoned them to ancient stones encircled by willow roots. Yoda lowered himself first, expression open, senses attuned. Obi-Wan sank beside him, lightsaber sheathed, ears alive to every flutter of leaf and breath of air. Qui-Gon extended his hands, palms unveiling hidden glyphs glowing faintly in the gloom. "The path I walked after death is not mine alone. You both must walk it, preserving knowledge when darkness falls." He guided them through ritual, closing eyes to sight, opening the inner ear to the living force's hum. Their breathing slowed until each inhale carried the swamp's perfume and each exhale flowed with ancient power. The ground pulsed beneath them as root and stone welcomed their communion. "Release attachment to form," Qui-Gon murmured. "Let sorrow become offering. Bind your essence to the Force's melody, a song without end." Obi-Wan's memory flickered, of Padawan trials, of Anakin's fall, of loss. As he released each memory like petals on water, clarity dawned. Yoda, too, beheld a network of shimmering threads, each a lifeline through time. Qui-Gon taught them to unfurl consciousness like lotus petals. He showed how to anchor memories in living crystal, ensuring no loss remained silent. They practiced walking between worlds, blending presence with force wind, becoming both sentinel and spirit. They lingered through countless moments until dawn's first glow stained the mist. Yoda's eyes opened first. "Complete," he declared, voice echoing with layered harmony. Obi-Wan followed, features radiant, burden lightened. Qui-Gon's smile was farewell and benediction. "You now walk two paths, one across the sea of stars, the other through mortal days. Teach this gift. Let no Jedi perish unseen." They rose, and the glade exhaled. The roots shimmered, mist receded, and Qui-Gon's image dissolved into silver dew. The sanctuary held two guardians, forever changed. Life resumed its course. Yoda, frail but resolute, vanished deeper into Dagobah's broom, guiding scattered survivors with new rites whispered on wind. Obi-Wan returned to Tatooine, resuming silent watch over Luke. In lonely nights, as twin moons rose, he felt Qui-Gon's quiet counsel, an ember glowing in the Force. Beyond, hidden enclaves of Jedi in desert caves, forest shrines and moonlit temples sensed a presence in dreams. A Padawan on Dantooine awoke knowing safety. A knight on Ryloth found calm in the storm. Each carried forward the legacy of becoming one with the Force. Scribes penned accounts of a twilight glade where masters learned to transcend. Those parchments, quietly whispered in secret conclaves, guided Jedi novices who dared to hope beyond defeat. In every heart that felt a ghostly breath in quiet moments, Qui-Gon's gift remained, a living testament to the light. The galaxy groaned beneath the weight of shifting empires. Jedi temples lay in ruin, their libraries scattered, their voices silenced. Yet even in such silence, there were whispers. Qui-Gon Jinn had not been seen in the light of day since his death, but in the Force, he had never been more present. As the Jedi Order collapsed, as hope flickered and faltered across centuries, Qui-Gon's presence became something else, not a spirit that lingered, but a current that moved, a whisper at the edge of intuition, at the crossroads of fate. He had taught Yoda, he had guided Obi-Wan, but his role did not end there. The Force had not finished speaking through him. Years passed, then decades, then war, and in a hidden chamber of the ancient Jedi Temple on Coruscant, long after its halls had fallen under Imperial shadow, a single flicker of light pierced the dust-choked dark. A young rebel, Luke Skywalker, stood among the rubble, drawn not by map or message, but by instinct. Faintly, beneath layers of cracked stone and time-worn data cores, something called to him. Not a word, not an image, a feeling, an invitation. He brushed his hand across shattered control panels, and for a heartbeat they responded, not with commands, but with memory. A figure in brown robes, outlined in blue-white light, barely visible. Not Obi-Wan, not Yoda, someone older and yet somehow still new. Qui-Gon did not speak to Luke in visions or dreams. Instead, he reached him in silence, in the pause before doubt, in the breath before choice. On Hoth, it was Qui-Gon's influence that steadied Luke's resolve as he ventured alone into the snowstorm. Not a voice, but a nudge, a reminder to trust. On Dagobah, when the cave beckoned, it was Qui-Gon's long-ago lesson, feel, don't force, that whispered across time as Luke stepped into darkness and met himself. And on Ahch-To, many years later, as Rey trained alone among wind-battered stones, that same whisper returned. She did not know his name, but she felt the pulse of his presence. Gentle, unseen, constant. In moments of uncertainty, she paused, and her breath aligned with something older than lineage. In her meditation, a warmth would pass through her hands. A breeze without wind would touch her cheek. When she reached out to the Jedi of the past, calling, desperate, in the shadow of Palpatine's return, it was Qui-Gon who first answered. Not in words, in permission. The unseen door he had opened for Yoda and Obi-Wan, he now held wide for her. The others would follow. Anakin, Ahsoka, Luminara, Mace, even Yoda. But Qui-Gon was the threshold, the beginning, the first to walk the path beyond death and still care for the living. For Rey, he was the quiet center of their chorus, a guide whose hand she never held, but always felt. His was the presence that turned uncertainty into courage, not by removing fear, but by standing calmly within it. And when she stood alone against darkness, on the scorched plains of Exile, the Force surged around her, not as weapon, but as memory, lineage, and belief. Qui-Gon's whisper was there, not in her ears, but in her stance, in her breath, in her decision to rise. Some Jedi leave legacies of war, others legends of wisdom, but Qui-Gon Jinn left something rarer, a pattern unseen, a ripple that altered fates without ever demanding them. His voice, quiet, steady, unyielding, became the compass in the hands of those who listened. And in the Jedi Temple archives, long after Rey had returned to rebuild, a datapad flickered to life on its own. For a moment, the screen held no words, only the faint, fading silhouette of a man who had once knelt beside a boy in the sand and never stopped believing in the next generation. The whisper faded, but its echo endured. In the hush that follows every dawn, the living force stirs in simple moments. It is not carved in statues or bound in code. It flows like water around stones in a sunlit grotto, gentle yet insistent, shaping the world through presence rather than decree. Qui-Gon Jinn first spoke these words to Obi-Wan beside a hidden spring on Tatooine. There, beneath a rippling pool, his master revealed a lesson not found in holocrons. The Force is a living current in breath and blossom, in children's laughter and leaves' sigh. It is life's pulse, unconfined by dogma. The Jedi Council taught structure, rituals, oaths, unswerving adherence to the code. But Qui-Gon believed true wisdom came from immersion rather than instruction. He urged Obi-Wan to sense the Force in every water droplet, to taste its essence in wind over dunes. He taught that mercy and morality sprang from connection, not from chapters in a text. Long after Qui-Gon's passing, his teachings echoed through rebel camps and hidden enclaves. On Yavin 4, Luke Skywalker felt a breeze caress the leaves, an echo of his mentor's spirit. He paused, trusting intuition over protocol. The cave's darkness held no fear, only revelation. On Ahch-To, Rey immersed herself in ancient codices, but it was the drip of water in the grotto that taught her patience. Each drop carried knowledge deeper than commentary. She learned that the Force lived in her heartbeat, in the flicker of torchlight, in solitude's embrace. When storms battered islands, she found peace by listening to rain on stone. Qui-Gon's philosophy demanded openness. It called Jedi beyond carved phrases and rigid postures. In exile, Padawans hidden on Dantooine closed their eyes and breathed, feeling solidarity in sorrow, and through it, courage. They rescued families amid ruin, guided by compassion born of silent communion with the living Force. Obi-Wan carried these lessons into Tatooine's twin sunsets, whispering them into Luke's nights in the dunes. Some secrets endured only in heartbeats, shaping destiny with quiet power. Yoda, exiled in Dagobah's gloom, wrestled with legacy. One dawn, compelled by memory, he closed his eyes and exhaled into the Force. In stillness, Qui-Gon's voice arose. Trust what you cannot see. The chamber's shadows shifted into purpose, and Yoda rose renewed. Far beyond core worlds, Jedi in hidden retreats found solace in the slightest stirring. A Padawan on Sulust sensed a spark in volcanic breeze. A hermit knight on Ryloth felt calm in sandstorms. Each carried forward the legacy of dwelling within the Force. In hidden sanctuaries across star systems, Jedi pause at dawn, recalling how a whisper in mist can guide many. They honor stillness, keeping the Force alive. The living Force remains a stream, ever moving, reshaping stones of doubt into sculptures of hope. In the hush that follows every dawn, the living Force stirs in simple moments. It is not carved in statues or bound in code. It flows like water around stones in a sunlit grotto, gentle yet insistent, shaping the world through presence rather than decree. Qui-Gon Jinn first spoke these words to Obi-Wan beside a hidden spring on Tatooine. There, beneath a rippling pool, his master revealed a lesson not found in holocrons. The Force is a living current, in breath and blossom, in children's laughter and leaves' sigh. It is life's pulse, unconfined by dogma. The Jedi Council taught structure, rituals, oaths, unswerving adherence to the code. But Qui-Gon believed true wisdom came from immersion rather than instruction. He urged Obi-Wan to sense the Force in every water droplet, to taste its essence in wind over dunes. He taught that mercy and morality sprang from connection, not from chapters in a text. Long after Qui-Gon's passing, his teachings echoed through rebel camps and hidden enclaves. On Yavin 4, Luke Skywalker felt a breeze caress the leaves, an echo of his mentor's spirit. He paused, trusting intuition over protocol. The cave's darkness held no fear, only revelation. On Archto, Rey immersed herself in ancient codices, but it was the drip of water in the grotto that taught her patience. Each drop carried knowledge deeper than commentary. She learned that the Force lived in her heartbeat, in the flicker of torchlight, in solitude's embrace. When storms battered islands, she found peace by listening to rain on stone. Qui-Gon's philosophy demanded openness. It called Jedi beyond carved phrases and rigid postures. In Exile, Padawans hidden on Dantooine closed their eyes and breathed, feeling solidarity in sorrow, and through it, courage. They rescued families amid ruin, guided by compassion born of silent communion with the living Force. Obi-Wan carried these lessons into Tatooine's twin sunsets, whispering them into Luke's nights in the dunes. Some secrets endured only in heartbeats, shaping destiny with quiet power. Yoda, exiled in Dagobah's gloom, wrestled with legacy. One dawn, compelled by memory, he closed his eyes and exhaled into the Force. In stillness, Qui-Gon's voice arose. Trust what you cannot see. The chamber's shadows shifted into purpose, and Yoda rose renewed. Far beyond core worlds, Jedi in hidden retreats found solace in the slightest stirring. A Padawan on Sullust sensed a spark in volcanic breeze. A hermit knight on Ryloth felt calm in sandstorms. Each carried forward the legacy of dwelling within the Force. In hidden sanctuaries across star systems, Jedi pause at dawn, recalling how a whisper in mist can guide many. They honor stillness, keeping the Force alive. The living Force remains a stream, ever moving, reshaping stones of doubt into sculptures of hope.